Okay, so once again, welcome to the second part of social and emotional supports for newcomers. And once we finish this second part, we will dive into collaboration. So I'm hoping to finish up the first topic and complete the second topic today. We'll see how we do. We are going to dive into the recording, which is midway through the slideshow. If you can't hear, just go ahead and unmute and let me know. That would be great. Let's see how we do.
Hi, and welcome to another PL Together Lounge Talk. I'm Adam Geller, founder and CEO of Edthena, the video coaching platform for streamlining feedback to teachers. Today, we're joined by Zaretta Hammond. She is the author of Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, and she's also someone who previously taught writing and now has a collection of children's writing in the form of a large library of children's books. Zaretta, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start by kind of bringing folks into the kind of area of culturally responsive teaching and discussing that. And I think we should, start by defining it. What does that mean? Because I feel like we use that phrase a lot, and in some ways we kind of like throw it around like a buzzword, but like that feels a little dangerous.
Yeah, it actually is. So we start with defining it. And I think this is where, for those educators that are really, really committed to equity, it behooves us to really get more nuanced in how we talk about it. So culturally responsive teaching, typically we talk about it in the same realm of social emotional learning and development. It's about relationships. And if we get on par with relationships, then, we're being culturally responsive. Another way we talk about it is motivation, like we're motivating, bringing elements and artifacts of students' racial or linguistic or ethnic identities in the classroom, and therefore kids will be more motivated. But we don't typically talk about it in terms of the changes in instruction that actually increase students' cognition. Yet and still, Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, who coined the term based on her research, put regaining academic prowess in the center of that. Then what you start to understand is culturally responsive teaching is not a thing, it's not a program, it's actually an algorithm. So we know the way the brain works. What we have to first do is have that brain calm and ready so that there is a sense of connection, it's not flooded with stress hormones, but at the same time, that in itself is insufficient. So the core of culturally responsive practice is the ability to help the student level up their cognition. I call this getting them ready for rigor so that they can carry more of the cognitive load. It is the antidote to inequity by design. So when we go into schools and we see Black and brown kids being those kids chronically at the lower end of achievement, then we want and need to accelerate learning. The way we accelerate learning is through increasing the students, what I call their learning muscles, right? Giving them the opportunity to grow the capacity to take on more rigorous content. But the ability to do that requires this algorithm. And here's the rub. Just like I explained, it's not a kind of a quick one-off thing, right? Just like I had to kind of go through a little explanation there. And this is where we kind of get ourselves in trouble. We think it's a kind of a turnkey, plug and play, I do it, I don't do it. All instruction is culturally responsive. The question is, to whose culture is it responding?
Oh, I like that one. I've never really thought about it from that perspective. I want to call out something you said, which in some ways feels so important given the broader let's say, banner issues as we think about coming back to school this upcoming year, which is this is distinctly different from the conversations that schools should be having around social emotional learning. That like you shouldn't bundle it all together as, oh, well, we're investing in social emotional learning and therefore we're getting culturally responsive teaching almost for free, right? Like these are different areas to focus on. So maybe help us understand, to differentiate that. Like how should we start? I mean, you talk about being responsive to students. So what does that mean? How does that interplay with this idea that you just mentioned, which is like, whose culture are you responding to?
So there are a couple of things in that, and we can kind of piece them apart a little bit. So the first, to just address whose culture you're responding to. American public education, and by extension, charter schools, charter school networks are predicated on the paradigm of white Eurocentric content, orientation toward learning, and added to that was designed to actually create racial stratification. That was one of its primary objectives. So when I talk about it is responsive to the dominant culture, that being Eurocentric, predominantly white, and focused on producing racial stratification through the underdevelopment of students' cognition. So when we are talking about things that are going to upend inequity by design, we're now calling in the interplay of anti-racist, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive. But to your point, all three of these get very conflated. People think they're interchangeable, and next thing you know, they think they're getting a twofer. We're doing trauma-informed, therefore we must be culturally responsive. And here's the thing, trauma-informed practice has to be contextualized in the sense of what are you assuming about trauma, right? Just assuming all Black and brown children are traumatized in itself has racist overtones. And so, and undertones, all tones. And so really being able to be precise about what is it? And it could be, kids are coming from low income communities, white, Black, brown, doesn't matter. All of those stressors, those ACEs, as people have talked about, are things we want to minimize in schools. So again, getting kids to feel connected, having a sense of trust, allows them to rewire their brain so they don't have that stress response. That's what trauma-informed practice is. Now, you could be doing that in ways that don't centralize students' racial identity and still be practicing good trauma-informed, practices. But to be culturally responsive means that you are pulling in the methods when you are doing trauma-informed practices that are the ways within those communities that people have minimized stress and built resilience. So anything you can layer on a culturally responsive practice, but you'd have to be deliberate about that. Just being trauma-informed doesn't mean you're culturally responsive. So again, there's nuance there. Anti-racist, same thing, right? You can be anti-racist. That's what we're saying no to. We're looking for microaggressions, getting racial bullying addressed and taken out of schools, addressing it in ways that gains and reinforces trust in a school culture and community is really important. That's the anti-racist. But just because you're saying no to something doesn't mean you're saying yes to something. And culturally responsive teaching practices is what we're saying yes to. Bringing in those other ways of doing, being, belonging that are not just window dressing, that the way in which the culture of a school or a classroom is shifted is to rebalance the collectivist and individual orientations, and not just based on what, a teacher who does not have any understanding of another culture thinks that is, but really because there is input from families, from the students, from communities to say, this is what makes us feel a sense of belonging and connectedness.
I like how it was, there's that phrase, yes, and when you're brainstorming. And I was thinking of that, yes, and, because it was yes to, like you were saying, trauma-informed teaching practice and being deliberate about how you are being culturally responsive.
Yeah.
Well,
Here's
go ahead.
I will say, though, and Dina Simmons, who is leading a lot of this work around, more informed social emotional learning and development, really talks about, checking your own biases when you're doing trauma-informed work and, social emotional, because those can be weaponized as well. She calls it white supremacy with a hug. So again, checking the narratives that lead you to these practices. So it's a yes and with a caveat.
Well, Zaretta, we are going to take a break. If you are finding this video shared somewhere out there on the internet, make sure to head to pltogether.org for the rest of this conversation, as well as many others. Zaretta, thanks so much for joining us on PL Together.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you all for listening in on that conversation. I wanted to pause here before we continue with the slideshow to see if anyone wanted to share a takeaway from that video, one point or a set of points that was relevant to you and something that you'll take away from that. If you want to, just go ahead and unmute and share. I'm not seeing anyone coming in, so I'll just share mine. I had a lot of things that came through for me with that video, and I wrote down a lot of notes when I was listening to it. But the thing that kind of caught me at the end was what you're saying no to in terms of creating a culturally responsive environment, and what you're saying yes to. And I liked how she brought it back around to getting input from students, families, and communities to find out what would feel responsive to them, to the students and families and communities that your school setting is serving. That's what I came away with it as maybe the guiding principle. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And as you recall, last week, we went through a few slides following that video. So I'm going to skip ahead to where we left off. Okay, so here we are. And we were going to discuss creating student portraits to eliminate student assets. We talked briefly about creating student portraits, and there is a link down here at the bottom that takes you to a further discussion about student portraits and some examples. We started the conversation about acculturation, and we did go through these slides, so I'm just going to continue on. We talked about the strategies for acculturation. And then we had a short time to think about when might you have experienced yourself or witnessed these acculturation strategies or phases, and how might these strategies or phases manifest themselves in a school setting. We talked about a few simple strategies. And now this is where we left off, supporting students through the acculturation process. One piece of developing that support is assessing your own awareness and understanding about your students and their acculturation process. I'm going to go through these questions, and I just want you to reflect briefly on each question with yourself. We are going to break out into groups a little later on, but we're not going to break out into groups to discuss these questions. I just wanted to bring them up so that if one or two or three of these questions jump out to you as something that you want to look further at, go ahead and jot them down. And of course, the slideshow will be there for you later if you want to revisit. So the first question is, what are the home countries of my students? I bet most of you know that, but if you don't, or even it might be significant to know what part of that country your student comes from. Do I serve any unaccompanied minors? Do you have students, children who are separated from their family for some reason? What understanding do I have, or am I lacking, about the cultures, politics, and education systems in my students' home countries? Am I engaging my students and their families in ways that are meaningful and culturally competent? And again, that's where we can come in and have those conversations with students and families about what they're looking for, what they need, and what would be meaningful to them. Do my classroom and school affirm and reflect the identities of my students? What are my students' perceptions on school climate and school safety? Have I observed any signs of trauma in my students? Am I aware of how social boundaries like cliques are informing my students' day-to-day experiences at school? Do my students carry heavy out-of-school responsibilities? For example, a family business, or childcare for younger siblings, or other older adults in the household? How is the current political climate impacting my students? For example, is there an increased fear of deportation or separation from family members? Do I use a variety of teaching modalities to make the curriculum more accessible and less intimidating to my students who are multilingual learners? How much do I know about the rights of multilingual learners? So those are just some questions to ponder. I hope some of them sparked an interest, and maybe you jotted one or two down to reflect on as you go forward. So some simple strategies, and some of these are a revisit from last week. Get to know your students. What skills and dispositions do they already have? What are their goals for themselves? Make the greatest effort to speak students' names correctly. Avoid nicknames unless the student especially makes the request. Establish class entry routines and exit routines. Have predictable classroom protocols, and just invite predictability overall into your spaces, because that does lower stress for students, and students can plan how they might want to participate if they know what's coming next. And then of course, we modify our teacher talk, rate of speech, use of idiomatic expressions, and support understanding with visuals, gestures, and modeling. This video I'm not going to play today, but it is a wonderful video about an example school that's doing a fantastic job supporting the social and emotional health of their newcomer students. It's about 23 minutes long, so I would strongly encourage you to watch it sometime when you are, maybe wanting to be engaging, but you want to just listen. That would be a wonderful, inspirational video to watch. So the next steps in terms of social and emotional engagement for your students, I would ask everyone, we're not going to share these, but just if you could take just 1 minute right now and answer these two questions, either in your head or jot the thoughts down. what actions do you want to take in your classroom, school, or school community environment to better support the social and emotional development of your multilingual learner, newcomers? And in order to make those actions effective, what supports do you need? Perhaps you need more information. Perhaps you need certain supports from your school administration or supplies, conversations, time. Just jot those things down. And I'll give you just about 45 more seconds to do that. Okay, going on to the next slide. These will be most useful to you when you are able to download the slideshow. If anyone wants the slideshow emailed to them before it's available on the website, go ahead and email me. I'd be happy to send you these slides so that you can access these. It's just simply more options for professional learning, more virtual series that we're offering from the DOE. And then finally, for the end of this social and emotional learning piece, if you want to take just a couple of minutes and fill out the survey while I switch over to the next slideshow, that would be wonderful. You can just scan this QR code and it will bring you up to a very short survey. I think it's 4 or 5 questions. It should only take you about a minute. If you would do that while I'm switching over, that would be wonderful. Thank you. I'll leave it here for just a moment so that you can go ahead and scan it. And then I'm going to stop sharing and switch over. Hi, Jen. I see your note in the chat. It says, can you please put that link in the chat? Could you clarify which link?
I think it was to the student portraits.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sure. I can do that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we're going to move on to the next section about collaboration. Okay. So even though this is our session 2, we're starting in on session 2 at this point, engaging multilingual learner newcomers, PLC, based on WIDA's e-learning course, Engaging Multilingual Newcomers. And as I said last week, if you have the opportunity to engage with that course as we're going through this PLC together, that's a wonderful way to do it. But if you do it at another time in the future, I'm sure you'll benefit from both experiences. Again, as I neglected to do in the beginning, my name is Rebecca Carey. I'm the ESOL consultant for the Maine DOE, and we're going to dive into collegial collaboration. Last week, we reviewed some of these key terminologies: multilingual learner, multilingual newcomer, acculturation, family, trauma, and students with limited or interrupted formal education. We did go over those at length in the first session, so I'm not going to go into the definitions at this point, but if you want a refresher on those, of course, you can revisit the archived video from last week, or also WIDA and the Maine DOE Multilingual Learner page both have good definitions for these. Today, in this session, I'm hoping that you will be able to describe the elements and benefits of a collaborative approach, particularly to support multilingual newcomers engagement. And there are three components in this collaboration: building collegial relationships, developing a shared approach, and establishing a common language. And I think this is referencing at a school level or team level. So it would be the ESOL teacher, which many of you are, and then there's the classroom teachers, and then there's the extended family of staff that can be called upon to collaborate and to support students as they dive into academics and as they need support from different elements within the school. So some key elements of a collaborative approach are supports that educators need as they respond to new demands. So many of you right now are responding to new demands of an increased number of multilingual newcomers, or a different group of families and communities that you're welcoming into your communities. So the things that are essential in developing a collaborative approach are communication between colleagues, a shared vision for supporting multilingual learners and newcomers, understanding and respecting the expertise of colleagues, and opportunities to reflect in strategic ways, and the opportunity to share a common language to support high quality communication. So a lot of these you'll notice are things that take time. And I think that as we go on with this discussion, we will notice that perhaps time and time to spend together with colleagues is one of the key elements of developing a collaborative approach. So here's a quote from Amy Foss Fraser: "Share responsibility so that all teachers are language teachers and support one another within communities of practice." And I think that's the essence of a collaborative approach for multilingual learner engagement. One of the pieces of creating a collaborative approach is working together. And that's not always the case in the way that schools are designed. We may work together with our grade level teams in a way that is functional and sustainable, but we may not work together in different formats. So one question that this element of the WIDA course looks at is, how do we create a school culture that supports asking for help? Multilingual newcomers present with intersecting needs. Each person within the school community has expertise to contribute to engaging and enriching the experience of multilingual newcomers. So one thing to consider as we move forward with this is who in the school community could be a support for you and the student as you're working to engage them in your classroom and meet their needs. Again, furthering that discussion about school culture, what does your school community do well right now to support and to promote collaboration? And what changes would you like to see to support increased opportunities for collaboration? I'm going to pause here because I want you to have a chance to answer these two questions and jot down your thoughts. We may have a chance to revisit these questions when we do the breakout rooms and come back together for a discussion. So if you would just take about 30 seconds right now to think about and write down the answer to, what does your school community do well to promote collaboration at this point? Or maybe something that went very well in the past but has fallen by the wayside. And then what changes would you like to see to support increased opportunities for collaboration? And I'm going to be quiet for just another 20, 30 seconds. Okay, thank you. So here we have, and we're just going to take a quick look at the WIDA Standards Collaboration Comic. And if this doesn't pop up for you, if you don't see it, go ahead and unmute and let me know. Okay, that's not working, right? Is anyone seeing that?
I'm not seeing it.
Okay, let me see. For some reason, it's pausing. Anybody know the answer to my problem? No. That's okay. We're going to go back. We're going to go backwards a little bit. At the end, what I'll do is I'll put that link into, when you guys are in the breakout rooms, I'll put it in the chat. Basically, it's a comic that just displays a conversation around collaboration with a group of staff in a school. And I think it's just one way of WIDA communicating about collaboration. And in fact, I can put it in there right now and you can just look at it at your leisure. I wasn't going to read through it because it is quite lengthy, but it's a nice way to have an alternative to sharing. And I'll go back to that slideshow where we left off. Okay, so this is the part of the show where we do a jigsaw activity through breakout rooms. I'm going to put this link into the chat and then everyone can go to this focus bulletin on collaboration from WIDA. If you would be willing to open that up and get ready, I'm going to have you go into breakout rooms. Looks like there are 8 of you, and this is a 10-page document. So I think what we'll do is we'll just break into 2 groups. And if you are in group number 1, if you would look at page 1 through 4, and if you were in group number 2, if you look through page 5 through 9, and then we'll come back together. If you want to, in your groups, go ahead and break that into smaller sections. Perhaps one person could read 1 page or a page and a half, however you'd like to organize it. And then when we come back together, I would like to have each group or each person, whichever way you want to organize it, share 1 or 2 key components about collaboration from this focus bulletin. Does that sound okay to everyone? Okay, let's give it a try. I'm going to drop in to the breakout rooms just to make sure things are going smoothly. So let's go ahead and start. And I'm going to ask you to take about 8 minutes for this task. If you feel like 8 minutes is too long, once you're into it, just go ahead and shoot me a message. You can leave the breakout room and come back to me and let me know. Okay, so we're going to go into breakout rooms. We're going to try 2 of these and we're going to create them. Okay, thank you. Um, so group one, would you like to share or take turns sharing what you came away with from the readings that you did?
Well, I just shared in our group that, I think I'm group one, yeah. That whenever I see collaboration, I think, oh yes, but time. And
Yeah.
Emily's at my school, and we were talking about how, every moment is spoken for during our early release days where we have PLC time, and it's kind of frustrating. But what I took away from the article was that, if co-teaching isn't feasible, which it's not, that the planning piece is crucial.
Yeah.
So that at least we have an idea of how we can support each other. And so she was saying the same thing, and we were just talking about how we need to advocate for that. Again.
Yeah, it almost feels like we're set up for failure if we don't get that chance to collaborate. And we just at my school do not have that opportunity or the time to be able to collaborate. Which is just upsetting.
Yeah, I as a teacher who spent 20 years trying to collaborate without the time built in, I can relate to that feeling of there are people who would love to work with us, people who would love to get together and collaborate, but where do you fit it in? Remind me where you guys are again, your school district?
Saco.
We're in Saco.
Yeah, so you have a lot on your plates, and the collaboration would really be very supportive. Okay, that's great. Any other pieces from group one before we talk about the other pages? Okay. Group two.
I'm happy to chime in.
Okay, thank you.
Not on mute. So I kind of started at the bottom of page 4. It led right in, and it was focused solely on the importance of planning and the need for it. You can't do co-teaching without that planning component built in. It is exactly what was described. It's a setup to fail. It kind of feels like the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing in that case. And so having those structures and routines, shared vocabulary are all critical in creating a positive interaction between the two areas of interest, right? Content in a way that is language rich and meaningful and appropriate. But it also didn't stop at just curriculum, but it went into professional learning opportunities, which I know Jen touched on. Like our PLC's time is already really booked up for us. And I think it's just now starting to incorporate an ML focus out of necessity. But prior to, it was never part of that process. So I'm glad it's happening now, but it kind of feels like we're trying to fix the roof when it's raining.
Yes.
So, but then we did get a little derailed because I had some other members in the group who are not classroom teachers or ML teachers. And so we kind of went off the rails and talked about WIDA and the role of assessments and what that does in helping us, look to can-do descriptors and align goals with standards. And
oh, good. That's a helpful discussion.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, thank you. And Heather, remind me where you are located where's your school?
Saco as well. I'm at pre-K in Fairfield.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for joining.
Sure, no, my pleasure.
Are you all from Saco? No, I wouldn't know because I haven't been there. So, do you guys just want to take a minute and say where you are from? Because I haven't internalized that information.
I'm from Portland Public School.
Thanks, Laura.
I'm the social worker.
Okay, great. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Same, social worker, also from Portland.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
I'm a social worker in Sanford.
Thank you. Thanks. Nancy, where are you from?
I'm in Saco.
You are, okay. So
Yeah.
we've got Portland and Saco. Thank you so much for joining. This is teamwork right here. And now I'm feeling like if I had known that, I might have put you together with your school-based team so you could have had 6 minutes of collaborative time. Maybe next time we should do that. Well, that's great. So let's revisit the questions that I asked before. And I don't know if you have anything different than we just shared, but so what does your school already do well that promotes collaboration on some level? And what changes would you like to see? And I know we've talked about time to be together, time to plan together. Are there different answers to either of those questions that anyone could share at this point? We've got social workers and I know we've got some ML teachers. Any classroom teachers? No, ML.
I'm
Okay.
a classroom teacher.
Okay, thanks, Emily. Thank you.
Now a special education teacher.
Oh, you are great. Thanks, Nancy.
Mhm.
So is there anything that you feel is already working well that maybe is a small piece? And could you share what does work well to promote collaboration at this point, if anything?
I can say it's new,
Yeah.
but I'm excited by conversations that I've had with the literacy and math interventionists at our school in an effort to better support
Great.
some of our newcomer students, and just in talking about strategies and best ways to meet their needs. And so, I don't know, just it was a great community feeling for me. And it was a great way to feel like we're looking at ways to create community and support in classrooms. So
Fantastic. Thank you.
I would
Anybody
say-
else?
Oh, sorry. I would
Yep.
say at my school, similarly, the literacy and math coaches have really stepped up to help assess students and think about programming. Same with guidance counselors, the resiliency coach, like they're all kind of really trying to support me and the students.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. And what about, other than the obvious, the time piece, what are some other things that might help if you could make a change? Or maybe time is it. Maybe time is it. And maybe that's what we all need to ask for as we're moving forward in life. Any other things that could make a difference? Yeah.
Maybe
Stop
opportunities to
firing.
do some co-teaching. I think that sometimes it's hard to find opportunities to do that.
Yeah. So some chances to practice doing it together.
Yeah.
Great idea. Yeah. Thank you, Nancy. Well, I think according to my clock, we have just 4 minutes left, and I don't want to miss my opportunity to finish my slideshow. And I just have a couple of quick slides left to go. From the current slide, I'm going to go here. And we just talked about this. Basically, what actions do you want to take? What supports do you need? I think you all have a really good sense of time together, time to collaborate, time to practice co-teaching, chances to even to have more interactive PLC times that you can actually work together. I think you guys expressed that really well. Any questions or things you want me to follow up on next week that we haven't touched on? Feel free to email me during the week. I know many of you from these sessions have emailed me looking for links or further information, and I welcome you to do that anytime. Okay, so not next Monday, but the following Monday, because next Monday is a holiday, we will finish up this PLC with module 3, which is based around instruction. So once again, here is that QR code. And if you are so inclined, sorry, are you seeing that blocking that view? If you're so inclined to fill out that survey a second time for this element, for the collaboration piece, that would be great. I would really appreciate it. And once you're done with that, that's it for today.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can say goodbye.
Thank you.
Take care. See you in a couple weeks.
Thank
Bye.
you.